Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Kirby. I want to reinforce what has already been said today and a little bit earlier. The U.S. military remains focused on the present mission to facilitate the safe evacuation of U.S. citizens, SIVs, and Afghans at risk, to get these personnel out of Afghanistan as quickly and as safely as possible. When this plan was put in place, we prepared for a number of contingencies and recognize that events unfolding at HKIA has drawn concern and attention throughout the world. We're actively monitoring the situation, what's happening on the ground, and we will continue to support the commander and adjust forces as necessary to allow the mission to be successful. Our troops are trained professionals. They understand the complexity, the urgency, and the importance of their mission. They remain agile. Our mission was and still is today to secure the airport so that we can evacuate, as said earlier, U.S. citizens, SIVs, Afghans at risk out of the country. We have approximately 2,500 troops that have moved into Kabul within the last 72 hours, and more will arrive soon. By the end of the day, we expect nearly 3,000 to 3,500 troops on the ground. First, for a real-time update, as of 15:35 local Eastern data time here, the airfield at HKIA was open for operations. Shortly thereafter, the first C-17 landed with U.S. Marines on board, and the next C-17 is preparing to land as we speak, with members of the 82nd Airborne Division. I'd also like to offer a couple of additional operational details. More than 700 SIV applicants have departed Afghanistan in the past 48 hours by a combination of contract and commercial air, bringing the total to date to nearly 2,000. Mr. Reed here will have more details on that. The U.S. military continues to supported the State Department with the closing of the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, moving several hundred personnel by helicopter to HKIA. Those personnel remain safe and are preparing to depart. Forces continue to conduct security operations at HKIA, and as I said earlier, we are in charge of air traffic control, and that includes with commercial contracted military air. We expect to maximize our throughput of all means of transportation over the next coming days. Again, our focus right now is to maintain security at HKIA, to continue to expedite flight operations while safeguarding Americans and Afghan civilians. We're proud of the professionalism and the skill of the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines are showing under extraordinary circumstances at HKIA, and they are absolutely prepared to respond and self-defend if necessary. Many of us have spent time in Afghanistan over the years and feel a deep sense of connection to the current events. We are focused on the safest evacuation of Americans and Afghans. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking time today. I'm Gary Reed. I'm the lead for the DoD Crisis Action Group for Afghanistan for matters pertaining to the relocation of refugees and transportation of our embassy staff, Americans, allies, and other partners from Kabul to their onward destinations. The Secretary established the Crisis Action Group in early July, and we've been working very closely with the Department of State as a lead agency since that time. Partnered with Department of Homeland Security, our initial focus was to relocate the SIVs, finalize their visas, and resettle them into the United States with the help of our non-governmental organizations. To date, nearly 2,000 Afghans have passed through this process, joining more than 70,000 that have participated in the SIV program since 2005. Our military has done an outstanding job supporting this effort. U.S. Northcom and U.S. Army North, operating predominantly from Fort Lee, Virginia, have provided housing, food, medical treatment, medical screening, and other services to these Afghans. Our military embraced the opportunity to recognize their contributions to combined operations in Afghanistan by welcoming them in the U.S. As we prepare for even more arrivals, U.S. NORTHCOM and the U.S. Army are working to create additional capacity to support refugee relocation in the U.S., including temporary sites under assessment at Fort Bliss, Texas, and Camp McCoy, Wisconsin. There may be other sites identified if services are needed, additional capacity is needed. At this point, we're looking to establish 22,000 spaces. We can expand if we need to. As with the operation we've been supporting at Fort Lee, persons that come to these locations will have been pre-screened by the Department of Homeland Security to enter on condition of full immigration processing once they arrive. With this operation underway, but given the urgency of the situation in Kabul, our focus has shifted to supporting movement of our embassy staff, American citizens, allies, and other partners out of Kabul. Starting on August 14th, we began movement of these persons on Department of Defense aircraft, providing them transportation that had flown into Kabul, delivering our troops and hauling cargo. This is an important point. The numbers to date are in the hundreds. We certainly have a much greater requirement. We are still in the process of bringing in forces. These aircraft, as space is available on the outbound, have been taking passengers. And of course, this has been somewhat disrupted in the last 24 hours. But nonetheless, we have transported several hundred to countries in the region and aligned them, again, with our State Department DHS colleagues for their onward transportation. We anticipate picking up the pace, provided we can stabilize conditions at Kabul as described by the General. Our military team in Kabul is working side by side with the ambassador and his staff to coordinate future airlift operations in the coming days. The Department of State and Department of Homeland Security will facilitate initial processing at overseas transit points and prepare for onward movement for all of those transported by the Department of Defense. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get to questions. Bob, want to go?
Thanks. A question for General Taylor.
Okay.
If I may. General, has the U.S. military conducted any airstrikes today or in the last 24 hours or so? And also, there have been some reports of Afghan pilots flying their aircraft into other countries. Is that happening? And is the U.S. taking any other sort of steps to prevent aircraft or other military equipment from falling into the hands of the Taliban?
Yeah. First, on the first question on the strikes. No strikes have been conducted in the last 24 hours, but the commander on the ground continues to maintain that capability if required to do so. The commander has the assets that are available there at HKI and in support from other areas of the region. I don't have information on your second part of the question, but we'll get back to that.
So there's no U.S. actions being taken to prevent equipment from falling into the hands of the Taliban by destroying it or anything else?
I don't have that answer to that question.
You don't have the answer?
Jen?
General
Yeah.
Taylor, was this a failure of intelligence or planning that led to the scenes we saw at the airport today?
When the scenes at the airport of everybody coming
that caused
onto
it to be shut down?
Yeah, what we know had happened at the airport was that there were a lot of Afghans that were trying to reported get out of the country. So I don't think that was a lack of planning. As we look at the coordination with those that were responsible for securing that, we'll look at our mission, though, as I talked earlier, is now that the airfield's open, is to make sure that it remains open. So like, as I said, we can continue expediting flights in and outbound.
But the quick fall of Kabul, was that a failure of intelligence?
I can't answer that.
And Mr. Reed, you're in charge of the SIVs. There are women who fought for the special forces. There are reports that the Taliban are now knocking on doors, going into the homes of those who served in the military. What are you doing to protect them, to get them out? Are you in touch with the Taliban, and do you have assurances that they'll be safe?
We recognize that beyond the SIVs, there's additional Afghans at risk, and they are included within the group of people that, in time, as we get through the Americans and the immediate priority, that we have plans in place to support lifting them, transporting them out of the country on the defense side. Again, it would be Department of State, Homeland Security, questions about immigration processing. We recognize the risk that they face, and we're doing everything we can to get this operation underway at scale so we can get through as many as possible under these very difficult conditions.
But are you communicating with the Taliban? Do you have a line of communication?
I'm personally not communicating with the Taliban, but I would imagine there is communications within the diplomatic channels.
नमस्कार, मैं हूं मानक गुप्ता। अगर आपको हमारा ये वीडियो पसंद आया हो तो इसे लाइक और शेयर जरूर करें और हां, हमें सब्सक्राइब और फॉलो करना ना भूलें ताकि आप देश और दुनिया की कोई खबर मिस ना करें। तो जुड़े रहिए हमारे साथ और देखते रहिए न्यूज़ 24।